Hello everyone, welcome to ETM 521. I'm Tom Riddle and I'll be working with you over the next 8 weeks as we decide what is culturally reflective instruction and how are our lessons and our practices in our classrooms and our schools both culturally and linguistically responsive. So let's look at how the course is developed. The course is developed with 4 modules. Each module is exactly 2 weeks long. The course guide and the module pages tell you what your assignments for reading and viewing are, and then what is your deliverable assignment at the end of each module. The other major part of this online course is the discussion boards. In each module, you have 2 to 3 discussion board threads that you have to respond to. For each thread, you post an initial response early in the module, and then you reply to at least 2 colleagues throughout the 2-week period. So if you have 2 to 3 discussion threads, you should be posting about 6 to 9 times throughout the module. There are 4 deliverables or 4 assignments in this course. None of them are too big, none of them overwhelming, and we'll talk about them in each module. If you haven't yet gotten the text for the course, make sure you get Culturally and Linguistically Responsive Instruction by Holly and The Listening Leader by Severe. Let's take a second to look at some of the major ideas that you'll read about in Holly and Severe in this first module. So Holly tells us about a concept called vabbing, and that is how do we get to know our students and how do we begin to create a culturally responsive classroom. And he says that there are 4 levels of vabbing in a classroom. The first is validation. That's where we legitimize the student's home culture and the language. This is where we go against the stereotypes of students and where we accept the behaviors the students bring into our classroom. We promote them, we accept them, we make them a part of our daily classroom culture. Next is affirmation. How do we affirm a student? How do we reverse the negative stereotypes that students see? And how do we also take some time to recognize that in our textbooks, in our educational videos, and even on the internet, our students see negative stereotypes of themselves every day? How do we provide positive alternatives in both our courses and our resources and our lessons to help our students identify in a positive and respectful way? Holly also talks about building. Building is investing in your students. We do this by building rapport with our students. This is important. Again, it's related to that validation and affirmation, but when we do this, we can better help our students and we can better teach our students, which leads to bridging. Bridging is helping them develop the skills. These are the academic skills they will need to be successful not only in our classroom, but also in other classes and in future years. Bridging is also helping them to learn good social behaviors that they will need to navigate after they leave us in college or in career. The other thing that Holly wants us to think about early on is, where does our instruction fall in the continuum? Traditional instruction is teacher-led instruction. It's a one-way street. Most of the interaction is based directly towards the teacher. It's not culturally responsive. Sometimes this is okay, but we don't want this all the time in our lessons. Responsive instruction is more of a 2-way street. There's more interaction between the teacher and the student and between each other in the classroom. And then culturally responsive instruction takes that a step further. It's responsive, it's 2-way, it's student-centered, but it's again working with those cultural behaviors and promoting positive cultural behaviors. Think about where most of your lessons fall. It's okay, though, for there to be elements of all 3 of these in a lesson. The whole lesson might not be culturally responsive, and that's okay. It's okay for there also to be elements of traditional instruction, but our goal should be for it to be more culturally responsive than more traditional. Another key thing that we should think about in this first module is data, and how do we use data in our classrooms, especially in a culturally responsive classroom. Severe tells us to think about 3 levels of data: satellite, map, and street. Our satellite data is our big picture data. It's our SAT scores, it's our state assessments, things like that. We don't get this data very often, but we put a lot of emphasis on it. Severe challenges to think maybe we shouldn't put so much emphasis on it. It's not really easy to respond to this data. It tells us how our students were doing and maybe helps us set a direction. But severe encourages us to look more at the map and the street level data. Map level data would be our benchmark assessments. It would be our unit assessments. These are end assessments or summative assignments. We can respond to them in the classroom, but maybe we can't respond to them as quickly as we'd like them to. Again, it helps us set a direction, helps us tell us where our students are, we need to dig down a little bit deeper according to severe. And that would be to look at our street level data. Our street level data is where our kids currently are. Where are they every single day? Street level data might be an exit ticket. It might be a formative assignment. It could be simple thing as student behavior. Our street level data we can respond to, we can make changes to. This is important data, and Zephyr really tells us that in a culturally and linguistically responsive classroom, we look at that data. So take a second to think about what data are you looking at in your classroom and when you're working with your student. Let's jump over to the course setup and just go through that real fast. So when you log in, make sure you look at the Read Me First section, which talks about the structure of the course and also explains what I talked about for the discussion forum and how that's set up. So make sure you take a second to read this. The syllabus gives you the course objectives, again, highlights the textbook, and the grade breakdown. The course guide should help you because it divides up each of the modules, tells you what the objective is, what you should be reading or viewing, and then what the assignment is and when it's due for that module. The rubric page is another important section because it gives you the rubrics for each of the 4 assignments and the discussion post. When you are doing an assignment, make sure you read not only the directions, but also read over the rubric so you know what is important to be included. Each module has its own page. It starts with the objectives again for that module, what you need to read or view, gives an overview of the module, links to the discussion forum for that module, and then gives the assignment. Quickly, the assignment for this module is to reflect on your own practice. So what you're going to do for this assignment, which shouldn't take you that long, is to take a 20 or 30-minute section of a lesson or a class period. Make a list of all the things that you do. Think about how do you greet your students, how do you get your students to respond, what do you do when your students are off task, how do you regain students' attention, what are the different elements of your lesson, how do you manage individual student behaviors. Set up a chart, and with your chart, list what happens, and then, for step 3, decide is that action traditional instruction, responsive instruction, or culturally responsive instruction. Then also label the activity. Is it validating or affirming behaviors, or is it building and bridging? So an example, and this could be set up in table format, you might greet your students at the door by shaking their hands and giving them a high five. That's culturally responsive instruction, and that's an example of validating and affirming. So list, about 10 activities or 10 things that you do in that 20 to 30 minute block, and make sure that you then classify them. Are they culturally responsive, traditional, and are they validating, affirming, or building and bridging? It's okay if one of your actions is not validating, affirming, or building and bridging. You might just be able to classify them where they would fall in the continuum. After you've done that part, you've taken your lesson, you've looked at it, take a second to do some reflection. You should write a 1-page reflection answering these questions. Are you meeting the needs of your students? How or how not? And how do you know? Think about what Zephyr says about data and what levels of data are you using. And then think about, as you are trying to create more culturally responsive instruction, what changes would you make in order to better meet the needs of your students? And if you are meeting the needs of your students, what are you going to do to stay fresh and continue? So this should be about a 2 to 3 page assignment, no more than that. Your chart with your lesson and its classifications, and then your 1 to 2 page reflection. Remember, that's due at the last day of the module. Click the link to turn it in. Finally, real fast, don't forget about the discussion forum. You have 3 questions to answer in this module. I look forward to seeing you on the discussion boards. Reach out if you have any questions.